The big revolution is coming. There's a world where in the future, you have a disease of interest, you run it through the simulator and it tells you, well, this is what's happening. So this is what you should do to correct the course of the disease.
That'll be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I know this because what we care about at Bioptimus is understanding when you design a molecule, whether it will have a positive effect for patients. And this requires understanding the patient biology, not the molecular binding. So this is what we do very differently from others. We have the team, we have the data, we have the product. I'm very optimistic that in the future there will be progress.
And so what do you think that means for doctors?
Jean-Philippe Vert walked away from Google to become one of the world's leading experts in AI biology.
Unlocking intelligence we need to transform disease prediction.
And how this can change people's lives forever.
Then what do you think success would look like, let's say 10 years from now, for you and the team at Bioptimus?
10 years is a long time. I think in 10 years, I would love to see drugs that we have helped develop on the market. But also I would say, the big thing will be about closer to let's cure all diseases, which is if we really understand better biology. And I really think that what we start seeing is that AI models, part of it through LLMs, but a lot through models like ours, which are trained on the biology, will eventually be universal simulators of biology. The pharma and biotech industry have been trying to do, but step by step. And I just think that AI will.
Did you know that 97% of our listeners are not subscribed to the Leading Beyond the Lab podcast channel? Be sure to hit subscribe to make sure that new episodes with the guests and companies that we're talking to land straight into your feed. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Leading Beyond the Lab. Today I had the pleasure of being joined by Jean-Philippe Vert, co-founder and CEO of Bioptimus, a company building foundation models for biology. Jean-Philippe has worked at the intersection of mathematics, machine learning and life sciences. This is all across academia, biotech and big tech. This gives him unique insights. So before founding Bioptimus, Jean-Philippe actually led AI for science with Google. He's now pursuing a much bigger ambition, building a world model for biology, connecting data across tissues, molecules, patients, and cells, helping to make biology much more predictable and more useful. Today, we talk about why all this matters, what it takes to build a company like Bioptimus from the ground up, whether this new wave of AI in biology is hype or genuine infrastructure for the future, which can give us all hope. So Jean-Philippe, it's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So lots of companies talk about the use of AI in biology. Yeah. I'd love to hear in your words what you think you and the team at Bioptimus are doing differently.
Yeah, sure. So what we do differently is that we develop AI solutions to understand biology in humans. So when you hear about AI in biology, most of it is about understanding molecules, right? So small molecules, big molecules, we talk of proteins, antibodies. So there's been lots of progress in using AI to design new molecules. However, what we care about at Bioptimus is not designing molecules. It's understanding when you design a molecule, whether it will have an effect, a positive effect for patients. And this requires understanding the patient biology, not the molecular binding. So this is what we do very differently from others.
So why do you think other companies in this space haven't done the same thing?
Probably because it's harder. In a sense, designing molecules is something that is hard, but for which there's been massive progress. AlphaFold starting a wave of innovation. And now we see lots of companies applying, let's say, AI models like LLMs adapted to proteins to design them. When you go to understanding whether your drug will work or not in patients, which is really the pain point of the pharma industry, right? That maybe we should remind listeners that designing a molecule is one thing, but passing the clinical trials, meaning once you have your molecule, you test it on patients to check if it works, if it's not toxic. This is where the big failure is, right? 90% of the drugs fail. So it's a more important problem, but it's harder because the data is harder to get to train AI models.
Okay.
We talk of data from patients. And also the architectures, the way to train a model is like an open question, much more open than when we focus on a very specific molecular design problem.
And so when you apply that, if I think about the 90% rule that you just talked about,
yes,
that is obviously a lot of wastage of resources, time,
absolutely,
patient experience, most importantly, and health and caregivers.
Yeah.
What do you think it could come down to based on what you've modeled and projected?
I won't give numbers about how, we want to improve the 10% success rate to much higher. Where's the limit? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure we can improve it.
Yeah.
And, we have to think a bit about why. I mean, why we are so bad collectively at this step, which is you design a drug and it doesn't work most of the time.
Yeah.
I think there are a few reasons, but probably a big one is that research is very siloed. Meaning, when you look at, suppose you have a disease, right? A cancer that you need to treat, you want to invent a new drug. You have very smart people. It's not a question of people. It's not a question of money. There's lots of money. But you have, let's say, very siloed research first to understand molecular interactions, then to move that to cell lines to check if on some cell lines it works. Then you move to animal models. Then you move to clinical studies. And there's very little communication between the different steps, right? So what we see differently is to say, well, if you want to understand or to predict or to generate a molecule that will have a positive effect for cancer in a patient, then you need to think of the patient throughout the research process. Meaning when you identify what would be a good target, right? Target is something in the body that you will try to perturb, when you design the drug, and then when you test it. And in particular today, there is a big gap between what's called preclinical studies, which is you test your molecule on everything you can, like cell lines, animals, transplants of your tumor in a mouse, etc. Most of the time it works very well. And when you jump to humans, most of cases it doesn't work. So this has a name, it's called translational gap. And what we try to do is to train AI systems that learn biology both from human data and from preclinical data to connect the two. Right? So it's very important to be able to connect different areas of research and development, patient data, preclinical data, molecular information, so that we have a full picture end-to-end of the effect from a molecular interaction up to the clinics, whether the patient will benefit.
Would it also help in making things more efficient when looking at translational studies by eliminating or not progressing with ones that clearly won't work?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the fastest impact we can have is probably in translational research, clinical design, design of trials. Typically, what you want to help clinicians, and we believe AI can help. So to bring the AI superpower to help clinicians make good decisions, right? And decisions are about which drug do you stop early, which drugs do you continue developing, and more importantly, when you develop a drug, how do you target the right population that will not only give a positive results in clinical trials because it works, but also in the future be treated with that drug.
So what actually changes in science and healthcare and medicine? Do you think we'll see?
I think the big change will be a surge of innovation, in particular in AI, to bring support systems to make good decisions. What we bring at the end of the day is mostly de-risk, bringing information to de-risk the decisions. And there's a sequence of decisions which are not only, when you develop a drug. So I insisted on developing a drug. There are many steps, and each step you need to make the right decisions. But also in the clinics, right? Like at a later stage, today you have many patients in the hospitals. There are many diseases which remain badly or untreated. We have 10 million people dying of cancer every year, and it's increasing fast. We have most of rare diseases with no treatment options. So at the clinics as well, we need decision systems that help doctors make the right choices.
Yeah, just thinking pragmatically on the search side of ARTO, for example, if there's a clinical development position at the translational stage, it's always been hard historically to find people that can harness being close to the science and have that scientific prowess.
Yeah.
Can combine that with patient-centric, traditional physician attributes.
Yeah.
Whereas what you're talking about, what Bioptimus provides, is kind of the tag on to make it infinitely more efficient, potentially.
Yeah.
Which is enormous when I think about some of the biological diseases. And even when you look at the clinical trials, what does it take? Between 7 and 14 years on average to get molecule from bench to bedside with a
Absolutely,
drug. So could it also, do you think there's a world where that window can be infinitely streamlined?
Yeah, I think so. So, I insisted on, let's say, increasing the probability of success. So if you make the right decision, right, at the end of the day, you test drugs with more support, like the AI will help you say, that's a good decision. So let's say you go from 10% to more success rate. So that's one way already to reduce the waste of money. So eventually to have a cheaper cost.
Yeah.
In terms of time, there's lots of opportunities. And in particular, when you think of defining what are the populations you target. Clinical trial, trials are long for two reasons. One is because it's long to find the patients, right? So also because when you run a trial, it comes with a very specific list of what patients are eligible to your trial. And sometimes, it takes years to find hundreds or more patients that meet the criteria. So enrollment can be accelerated if we have efficient ways to pre-screen patients, for example, meaning in all hospitals, you would like all patients to go through a routine exam that says, hey, guy, maybe you may be eligible to that clinical trial that's happening in some other country.
Okay, yeah.
So that's one thing that we work on. Actually, we work on developing with the AI very convenient, fast, and cheap pre-screening tests, for example, based on convenient, on images. Like in all hospitals in the world, when you have a cancer suspicion, you take a biopsy and you look at it under the microscope. That thing is happening everywhere. We bring AI to look at the image and pre-screen patients, for example, predicting if they have a mutation, etc. So that accelerates the recruitment process. That's one way to shorten the time.
It seems obvious, but that just sounds completely transformational when I think of the healthcare systems and the proactivity in that approach.
Yeah.
I remember the UK, they spent billions or wasted billions trying to build a system which can simply store patient information.
Yeah.
But one of the challenges they had was the security, I think. I think it was around data security.
Yeah, probably,
How were you able to get around that like we couldn't in the past, I suppose?
Well, security of patient data is obviously one of the most important things we need to account for, right?
Yeah.
We need security. I think it's fully compatible. Today we know, it's not only in healthcare, but security of data in banking, in many fields is a solved problem, right? So what I'm describing is more an implementation of a software, let's say in hospitals, that is not about collecting the patient data and putting it, at risk. But it's really about saying, well, today the AI technologies allow to do, to see things in images that before we could not see. So if we deploy the solutions, the software installed, and then in every hospital, patients could be eligible in a sense to be screened to see if they have mutations, kind of things.
And is there a world where certain types of cancers and things like that could be detected really early with that sort of screening?
I think so. So that's another very important topic, which is, when we talk of cancer, the best cancers, the best
time.
The one that can be treated are often the ones which are detected early. There's massive difference, right? Detecting early, this is something that is one step further what I was describing. So, I was saying, once you have a suspicion of cancer, you can take a biopsy, look at it, and then be screened efficiently. But of course, we would prefer to detect cancer before even you see it and you take a biopsy. So this raises the question of, can you detect cancers from other data? Typically, it could be from a blood test, or it could be from, there's lots of signals that we can detect about behaviors of people when they interact with softwares, etc. So that's not something where we are sure where we go. We don't work on that ourselves because we focus more on the clinical data. Let's say once a cancer is detected, because we say, well, once a cancer is detected, we need to treat it. So we work more on that. But I'm very optimistic that in the future there will be progress that allow to detect weak signals in common exams, so that we can detect earlier cancer. That would be the single most impactful thing
really
for
exciting.
cancer, right? Now there's a big, and this is experts know as well that there's a big question, which is when you detect when you try to detect very early cancers, you can have false alarms. Like in your blood, you may have, a DNA suggesting a cancer may be developing somewhere in your body, which may be good because then you can detect it early. But in many cases, the cancer does not really develop, right? So the difficulty of early detection is not to over-detect.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah, because the sensitivity can be too high.
Exactly.
Yeah, fascinating.
Because the body is full of diseases, but your body is very good at stopping diseases as well, right? Without any intervention.
So for you, JP, your profile, more than I think anyone I've spoken to, just really sits at the intersection between science, technology, and healthcare. I mean, you've worked for Google as the AI science lead.
Yeah.
You've built tech, bio, AI, biology-focused companies in the life sciences sector and been an academic leader and professor. So you're well positioned to give some good insights, I'd like to think.
Yeah, sure.
So why now, with that very nice career path that you were on, why now is the right time to set up Bioptimus?
So there is a time for me, and there is a time for I think it's a time now to accelerate on that. Yeah. Regarding, myself, as I said, I spend most of my time actually as a professor. First part of my career, then moved to Google, then to some tech bio, then startup founders. To me, this trajectory is I really loved having different experience, and quite often moving a bit outside of your comfort zone is when you learn. Maybe I could summarize my trajectory towards, in the terms of I want to have more impact. Mm-hmm. So I really loved being professor, doing research, and to some extent at Google, I was also in research. It was fantastic, but the main output of research is knowledge. So it's a scientific publication, and I like when you're professor and team lead in a research organization, your main end goal is to write papers and papers in the sense that you create knowledge. But after a few years there, I was always working between machine learning AI and cancer research. And at some point you ask yourself, how many kids or how many people did I save, right? And it takes time. So personally, I wanted to go closer to saying, okay, if I really want to change people's life, in oncology, for example, what does it take to go beyond pure research and see how the research can be turned into products that then turn into new drugs and new clinical applications. So I personally, I think I try to bridge personally the early research to the applications. Now the bigger context, I think today there is a massive opportunity. Everyone knows that AI has made progress, is impacting so many fields. Most of the AI we hear about actually is what people call LLMs, large language models. So these are the chatbots, ChatGPT, Gemini. They can be used in many settings to help people communicate, invent, reason to some extent. But the technology that underpins the LLMs, what we thought about is that this technology now is the good time to adapt it to not human language, but to other disciplines, right? And the reason is that now we have the compute facilities, right? We have massive data centers to run big compute. We have the AI models, which can be quite adapted between LLMs and analyzing biomedical data, for example. And we have lots of data. So in biology, there has been lots of data generated in genomics, lots of data in hospitals. So when you combine the fact that today we have so many digital data to describe biology and healthcare, plus the AI methodology that progressed thanks to the Google, etc. Yeah. Plus the compute facilities, there's just a massive opportunity to say, hey, suddenly biology can become an engineering science, right? We can really systematically take biomedical data, train AI system on them so that we have a computer model of biology that help us make rational decisions.
And how do you get enough data? I mean, that may sound like a stupid question, but how do you go all the way, around the world, different ethnicities and backgrounds and things, or how does that work?
That's a fantastic question. Actually, that's one of the pain points of these this objective, right, to develop AI systems for biology. I would say some of the data is just available for everyone. There's been massive public efforts funded by international consortia to generate, genomics data on cancer, to generate lots of what's called preclinical data, right? So all of that allows already to train systems on DNA, on proteins, like LLMs on proteins that are trained mostly on public data.
So the data was always there, or
Yes.
has been there recently, but I suppose the time invested on a human level to gather the relevant data within that pool is almost nigh impossible for a human brain or team of human brains.
Yeah.
Whereas with your models, it's possible.
And also that's not all of the data. But so I just want to say that, for example, AlphaFold, which is a big revolution, was possible because for decades the academic community had been generating the right data that were public, and then AI came, and AI plus the decades of research gave AlphaFold and revolution. In our case, we want to connect all of this public data with patient data. And this is where it gets harder because, as you say,
I can imagine.
we said earlier, the data is not on the web for good reasons. We don't want it to be on the web.
Yeah.
So we need to generate data, and we need to access it, but from human samples. Typically, people in any hospital treated with cancers, we would love to, to have an image, to have the genome, the proteome of the disease before treatment, after treatment, and that data would be super useful, to feed an AI system to learn what it takes, to treat someone. So what we do in our company is that we do partnerships. We go to see hospitals across the world, in Europe, in the US, in Asia, very diverse, hospitals, companies who generate data, and we do partnerships. And there's tons of possible partnerships. Sometimes they already have data, so we negotiate a deal to see what would it take for us to be able to pre-train our systems on part of your data. Sometimes it's about giving money. Sometimes it's about giving a model. Sometimes it's about collaborating. And also we do invest ourselves, meaning we're ready to help hospitals, clinical centers, etc., generate new data that we fund, and that typically we take some commercial rights on the output of what can be done with the data, and we give the property of the data to the hospitals because it comes from the patients, etc. But this is the hard part, being able to generate data,
okay.
and it comes for us through partnerships with the best hospitals in the world.
And I suppose your academic background must help give you an edge because you can speak their language.
Yeah, and you
build those
speaking
relationships.
the language, and also we're a company. We have an ethos of sharing, I would say. So, for example, our first. So we built. I didn't explain yet, but we built what's called foundation models. It's also called world model, meaning what we do is we access big data sets from different modalities. So we have images, we have genomes, we have lots of things.
Yeah.
We feed that to an AI system to pre-train it, and once the AI system is pre-trained, we sell it to partners, to companies, to pharma companies, so that they use it for their specific goals, which could be predicting if a drug will work on a patient. Okay, that model, the first we pre-trained, it was for images, exactly for the learning to read biopsy images. And the first model we just released for free for the academic community, for example. So that's how also we build, we build a community.
The trust.
The model has been downloaded more than 1 million times by many people around the world. It's been used by, we have partnerships with MIT, Oslo hospitals. They use it for their own sake, etc. So we really see, this ecosystem. We cannot solve it by ourselves. And so in a sense, it helps us create trust and also create what I think will work at the end. Curing cancer is not something one company will do. We collaborate, we give back, and we co-fund, and of course we're interested to work not only for the data but for the expertise as well, and having in mind that at the end of the day what we care about is helping patients which are treated in these hospitals.
And do you partner primarily on the drug development side with mid to large pharma or biotechs as well?
Across the board, we develop, we work with large pharmas, with biotechs, as well as with diagnostics companies, And also, there are so many companies which create a layer between us and the pharma. So, for example, what I mean by a layer is that our model can be encapsulated in a software that has a specific mission, which could be optimization of clinical trials, or which could be an assistance for pathologies, for example. So these are also intermediary companies to whom we sell a license to our software that build a specific application on it and sell it to doctors or to pharma companies.
So the root of it all is this incredible foundation model.
Absolutely.
And then you look at its real world application to create meaningful value for patients, caregivers, etc.
Exactly.
Yeah, but what's quite good there, just from you talking about it, is it's really obvious that there's a natural feedback loop from the people on the ground, if you like, about what problems you can use that data to solve.
And that
like
the feedback loop. Yeah, the feedback loop is so important.
Yeah,
that's connecting the dots. Also in my career, you mentioned I worked at Google before. I remember at the time even before I joined, there was a question in the big tech industries about when you develop a fantastic tool, should you keep it for yourself or should you open it to the community? At the time, Google developed something called TensorFlow. Then Meta developed, Facebook developed PyTorch, for example. So these are really software libraries which were developed for internal purpose, but that these companies decided to give for free to the world, open source, right? And it's not obvious to do that. I remember, when I talk to my investors, etc., saying, well, we have a fantastic model and we decide to give it for free to the world. It's kind of,
How did they react?
non-trivial, but but it's so obvious that, in terms of impact and in terms, so there is an impact that's multiplied, which is, and investors say, well, impact is good, but if there's no revenue, it's not good for us. It's good for the world, but not for us. But in fact, what's good for us is essentially the feedback. It's suddenly our model is used everywhere, and we get so much feedback, which is so valuable about what are the use cases. It also creates trust, collaboration, etc. So I would say playing with that, with that capacity to say, well, sometimes we, even as a company, sharing, giving for free can make sense, even economically, because it builds the foundation of something big. Is something we're very eager to.
I think that's actually something that's become really pertinent across a lot of industries in the past 5 or so years. I think people sharing things for free, which historically you'd want to keep it all in-house, and everyone create those silos that you referenced earlier, but even in like an industry. And whereas now people kind of accept that, they take a long-term or mid-term view at least to provide value in different meaningful ways. And so social media helps when you think people tell their stories and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you had this remarkable position at Google. I'm interested why you left. But I know you've talked about what the motivations were, but what was the kind of key inflection point where you thought, well, I'm going to go into industry, into the life science industry?
I think there were two very easy reasons. So one is, I joined Google because when I joined, it was, I think, the best place to learn and to do research in modern AI. Right? It was just the time after the transformers were invented at Google Brain. Fantastic people. It was a magnet for talents. I really loved it, and my colleagues were some of the best researchers in the world. So I love that. But personally, my long-term journey has always been to navigate between AI and applications in medicine and life sciences. And I think that at Google, at least at the time, the vision of Google on healthcare was not very clear. And it was, I think, not the best place, as I said, to have an impact on patients. It was the best place to do research. But when it came to, okay, once we do research, how do we do, biological validation? How do we go to hospitals, etc.? For many reasons, I think Google, it could change, right? But at the time was not
big tech.
It's a big tech company. It was not a pharma company. So I wouldn't call that a frustration. I knew that it was, but to me it was clear that that was not the place I should have stayed if I wanted to say, well, now that we have developed some good research, how do we make a drug, right? And I would say in parallel, when I left Google, I joined a company called ARTO. which is a company very dear to my heart because I knew the founders very well. They had funded the companies a few years back, and at some point it worked. They raised money, they had lots of scientific successes, they became a unicorn. And so they came to a point where, they came to me saying, well, now that we are not a tiny company anymore, but that we're growing, we need someone a bit like you, with the experience of managing, etc., scientific leadership. And it was just obvious to me that my place was more at Alkin, where I could have a big impact as a chief science officer, rather than as one more research lead at Google, which, in terms of impact, it was fantastic for personal, learning and science. But I saw this opportunity to just help Alkin go to the next stage. So I didn't want to miss that.
Yeah, of course. And what did you learn from big tech when it comes, aside from the obvious tech side of things?
Yeah.
From like a scaling, growth, way you deliver projects. I'm just thinking from our listener base, who are predominantly from a life science community. What you've got more of is that. So what did you learn and take from that still works, that you apply today?
I learned so many things. So and on the good side and on the less good side in terms of what we should and what we should not do. I would say, first of all, and Google is a bit a special company. It's a very big company, very successful, but it used to be a startup not so long ago, right? So working in a company like that makes you think that everything is possible. Sky is the limit, Google. Yeah. And Google maintains this culture of, nothing is impossible.
Innovative, yeah.
Just do it.
That's cool.
And scale. So this is something, seeing it from the inside is something that you feel. So it removes your
limiting beliefs as well. Disappear. Yeah, I like that.
That's one. Now I would also say, so there are so many good things. Google has really optimized many processes internally. So not only the science and tech, but things are meant to be lean, are meant to be fast, etc. On the other hand, it's also fair to say that it became a big company. When you have 100,000 employees, it's not the same as when you have 10 employees. And so things like there are many management layers. There are questions about what's the added value of middle layers in management. You need them probably, but somehow when leaving Google, I thought to myself, well, until we are a big company, it's better to just have a very flat organization, etc. So that's.
I suppose it's easier for innovation to poke its head.
Yeah, and the question of how do you align different viewpoints, etc. Obviously, and this is not really about Google. It's any corporation with many people.
Well, even like in biotech, for example, the R&D model used to be the big farmers would grow it all internally, but now they gobble up biotechs at certain stages that hit certain criteria.
Yeah, so
same sort of in most.
So de facto, let's say, decisions are made much more quickly in small startups and small companies than in big one. No matter how good the big one is at optimizing this decision making.
So I've heard you talk about real defensibility with Bioptimus. What does that mean?
So as I said, we tackle a hard problem, and the reason there are not so many companies do the same thing is that it requires a bunch of things, which de facto are defensible modes for us. One of us is, which these days is very important, is the people. We need to train big AI models, so we need people who are able to do that, but also we need people who understand biology, and biology is quite broad, from molecules to biomedical images to clinical studies. So we have aggregated a pool of talents, which I think is quite unique. You mentioned my background, but I'm not the only one. We are 6 co-founders. Several of my co-founders were actually former colleagues and top talents, top scientists from Google, DeepMind. So these are, today rare talents, but they are mission-driven. A bit like me, they say, well, we have this talent, so if we have this superpower, how can we use it? For what should we be using it? And so having these talents working full time to try to cure cancer is something which seems obvious, right? But which is not often the case. So talent is one. 2 is the data. As I said, many startups with talented AI scientists start saying, well, AI can solve everything, so let's cure cancer. And they say, where is the data? And the data is not there. So I would say maybe 50% of our value and time spent and effort is about how to access unique data. The company, when we started it, we already had a very unique partnership that gave us access to the largest cohort of cancer patients with systematically, the tumor being coming with images, with genomics, with spatial genomics. So this is a unique cohort, a unique data set, you would say, which was funded by Alkin, my previous company. And so there is this partnership that gave us access to that. And since then, we have developed new partnerships. We have access to millions of patient data. And so this is a very defensible mode because the data is just hard to get and it takes typically years. And it's not only money, I would say. It's really developing partnerships, trust with partners that give you that. So talent and data probably are the most defensible mode that we have. Also, I think the timing. We started more than 2 years ago. We have built so much, so many layers. We have learned so much over the last 2 years. And I would say 2 years ago, even talking to pharma leaders, what we were, when we launched, I think it sounded exciting, but very abstract. People did not understand about foundation models, multimodality.
Not a well-trodden path in the same respects of what they're doing, yeah.
And it has changed so much. 2 years later, now I was at JP Morgan conference, the big conference in San Francisco, once per year in January. CEOs of big pharma companies, now they tell you what we need is a foundation model, multimodal, to understand patient biology, which is pretty much what we started doing 2 years ago. So I think the time that we have spent also starts being a defensible mode because it's hard to catch up. I mean, this is hard science. We learn so much about how to process the data, what architectures, what AI architectures are needed, etc. We share some of it, as I said. Some of it the core IP we don't share. So that's also something that we are building, starting early.
From someone that's done this in Alkin and now in Bioptimus, what's the secret to bringing together the different minds for things like from tech, from the people, from the data, and what's the secret to meshing that all together in a super productive way and building a great culture at the back of it, do you think?
I think talents attract talents. As I said,
Steve Jobs used to say that a lot, didn't he?
I don't know. I'm honored if I think Steve Jobs is a good role model for entrepreneurs. But it's really the case. At least for us. And again, it's really not only me. Like I think I'm part of this pool of people who are visible. As a professor, I have taught to many students as well. But my co-founders and the first employees of the companies are super, super strong. We insist a lot on the culture as well. We are clearly a company, this is the case of, I would say, all startups, but we can either all win together or, I wouldn't say lose, but, learn together that we did not manage to make it. There is no path for individual success in a startup.
Yeah, I agree.
The success is the sum of
ego has to get parked, doesn't it?
But no ego, but still super ambitious, etc.
Yeah.
So we care a lot about the culture, and I think when I say talent, there is the technical talents, which is we are pure, really very strong talents, but also we care a lot when we recruit people, and it's quite natural. We care a lot about team spirit and values.
So the AI topic is becoming a hot topic. And it's very broad, and you must hear all the time the word AI. As someone who specialises in this space, it must sometimes become almost noisy because you think, well, what problem are they actually solving and things like that. I also hear on the investor side of things that unless, for example, a biotech is ingratiated with AI from the very offset, almost like a platform biotech, or they are an AI company in the health science, it's much harder for them to secure funding because that's not necessarily seen as the cutting edge. What parts of AI in science or healthcare do you think are currently overstated?
Overstated? I'm not sure there is. I mean, I'm really optimistic about the impact of AI. I think it's just the beginning of the AI revolution. We're just exploring the low-hanging fruits, the obvious use cases. But the big revolution is coming. I didn't want to answer your question earlier about we are 10% success rate. How far can we go? I'm optimistic. I don't see any limit, right? I don't see why one day we won't be at 100%. It's just
that'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
Once we
One step at a time.
once we waste less time and money in clinical trials, let's do more clinical trials. Right?
Yeah, it focuses the energy on the same productive things.
But already, and so increasing probability of success means we're just. I mean that should be feasible because it's just about you observe, you collect information, and you want to bet that the patient will respond. We should be better at that. Then there is, I think, the big thing will be about closer to let's cure all diseases, which is if we really understand better biology. And I really think that what we start seeing is that AI models, part of it through LLMs, but a lot through models like ours, which are trained on the biology, will eventually be universal simulators of biology. And so there's a world where in the future, you have a disease of interest, you run it through the simulator, and it tells you, well, this is what's happening, so this is what you should do to correct the course of the disease. And this is what the pharma and biotech industry have been trying to do, but step by step. And I just think that AI will completely change that with this end-to-end understanding of diseases.
When you combine that, with wearable devices that track certain data points, it makes it even more personal, doesn't it, to you?
Absolutely, yeah.
On a tangent, what do you think that means for doctors in terms of their role and the number of them needed to meet patients? Do you think that will change radically, or do you think it will maintain the same sort of model?
For doctors, I think the relationship between doctors and patients is already changing and will change more and more. There are studies, and obviously in most countries, patients before going to see the doctors already asked ChatGPT or Google about their conditions, so they come equipped.
I do, yeah.
And it's lots of. I mean, part of it is garbage knowledge, part of it is relevant, but people start coming to see doctors with their own understanding of the disease. Similarly, doctors obviously use more and more tools to help diagnostics. So I think what probably will be here for a long time is the human relationship, because when you think of doctor and patient, it's a lot about having a holistic understanding of the patient condition. It's a lot about having empathy, psychological safety, etc. And that's something that I think today the doctors have the possibility to improve as well, to spend more time on that instead of just typing and filling
logging
forms. So I think there's lots of positive that will come out of that.
And from someone that was successful at Alkin, what do you see in the mid to long term future will separate the longer lasting companies in this space, the ones that don't last?
So there are so many companies. It depends a bit on your business model, I would say. Let's say the standard biotech play is a biotech is meant to make a drug,
like a single asset type.
And sell it or develop it, etc. So that thing will, in a sense, they take all the risk, but with a big reward if it works. I think what will change is that we will see more and more platform companies, but doing the same thing. So, AI accelerates and reduces the cost of testing in parallel many hypotheses.
Mm-hmm.
So probably, if I had to bet, I think that the next big wave of innovation in biotech will be new biotech companies that just launch, a bunch of early programs in parallel, but which can stop them very quickly. So industrializing, in a sense, scaling the possibility to cross. And we see that already coming a bit with the with the Gen AI, etc., where you can just have lab in the loop approaches where you have an AI system that more and more generates many hypotheses. So you need tools to test them in parallel. You collect all of that, then you make smart decisions. So I think the landscape of biotech and innovation in new drugs is evolving quickly.
Yeah, and hopefully the 90% thing that everyone talks about, that we talked about earlier, you know, a small change in that ratio is significant in every way, isn't it? From a wastage, from a patient care experience. So I'm certainly optimistic.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that Bioptimus has assembled a great mix of technical and scientific talent, and intellectual property, of course. What made you believe this could be a real company, and what are some of the key challenges you've had on that journey?
Well, I'm pretty sure it's a true company. Yes. So we have the team, we have the data, we have the product. I think, you know, for us, if there was a challenge, is that we are tackling a complex program, which is eventually, you know, having this machine to generate and test hypotheses at scale, train on data that we don't have yet, but that we need to generate. So probably the biggest challenge is to find intermediate milestones, proof points that allow us to regularly fund the company. We have a clear strategy because, you know, the long-term vision is very clear and very ambitious. It's about having this universal world model of biology. So that thing will be an AI system that once we have it, can read any data, could be a patient data. Once it's read, it represents the patient internally, a bit like a digital representation of the patient, a digital twin, and then can be queried to ask questions about, okay, what's the likely evolution of the patient? How would it change if you did a perturbation, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we're building, but, you know, it will take years, right? Many years to do that because there are so many complexities there. So the question for us is until we have it, and then, you know, then the value is obvious because you can find new treatments, develop faster, be more rational, etc. What we do is that we find intermediate steps, like for example, we started instead of saying we take all the patient data, we started with a first modality which is images, histopathology images. Now we're adding more modalities. We're talking about transcriptomics, proteomics, genomics. So we add modalities one by one in order to go from, you know, nothing to the big model by step. And importantly, as a company, we find use cases that create value along the way. So already, you know, we started by creating a first model that is already, you know, a product that we sell, which is this foundation model for images. And we found use cases where, because this model already can be used to build biomarkers and screening tools and patient stratification tools, etc. But I think, you know, the challenge for us is to make sure we can create enough value so that these models, which is not what we build long term, allow us to have a business model to fund the company, to bootstrap the company long enough so that we can grow it.
Yeah, and that vision is fascinating. So will that be, from a commercial perspective, the companies developing the drugs or developing to achieve a certain target, they will basically partner with you, and you'll ingratiate yourself with their team, their translational functions and things like that, to optimize and improve the productivity of their development.
Yep.
Yeah, nice. With all of that,
yeah,
how do you as a company decide what targets to focus on?
Which targets? Well, I think for us, it's not so much. So it's not target in the sense of partner-led, but yeah. So it's not a target in the sense of which protein we target. But I think there's a clear question on prioritization. As I said, you know, we decided to start with images, then to add proteomics, transcriptomics, then we'll add. I mean, we have clinical data. But then there's a question, you know, what do we go after next? Because we cannot do everything in parallel. So do we go after radiology data? Do we go after ctDNA? Do we go after, you know, specific models for ADC response prediction, etc.?
Yeah, exactly.
So these questions, well, this is where we gather expert opinions. You know, I'm the CEO, but I have a fantastic team where we keep discussing every day about these topics. We have a bunch of advisors. We have a fantastic scientific advisory board as well as industrial advisory board. So we clearly, you know, the decisions we make are meant to keep the long-term objective while taking opportunities which are shorter term. To be concrete, for example, We know that one of the big pain points of the industry is this, predicting patient outcome if you treat them with different, treatments. There are very exciting treatments these days. There is all the ADCs, all the bispecifics, trispecifics. So we know that these complex new drugs, they are in the pipeline of all the pharma companies. We know that probably, if nothing is done, then they will hit the 10% success rate statistics. So now is the time to help them, right? And so for us, this means, well, because of the by design, these molecules, we know they should be able to work if we talk of oncology, right? Something in the tumor is present. It could be some immune cells have to be present and express a given target together with the cancer cell not too far, etc. Based on this rationale, we decide that for us, it's good to prioritize collecting patient data that describe these types of tumor microenvironment, for example, both from the organization of cells perspective, but as well in terms of what are the genes, the proteins present, etc. So this is fully aligned with, let's say, the long-term vision of building an AI world model of biology, but we adapt it to the immediate needs of the pharma industry, saying, well, if we have to focus on something today, probably we should focus on building some AI virtual tumor microenvironment, for example, because we know this is already useful today for our customers.
Yeah, there must be a really difficult decision where to prioritize your time.
Yes,
for such a big space. So I can see why there's a democratic way of agreeing on that target.
Yeah, but making decisions is this is a job of any company has to make decisions. Yeah.
So it's an incredible journey you've been on. What are there people that stand out as people that have been a shining light in terms of mentorship, or people that you've always gone to that have steered you in the right direction? I'm intrigued by if there is anyone like that for you.
There are so many people. I think I'm inspired by my team actually.
So it's when you collaborate, the ideas, the entrepreneurship of it all.
Yeah, I would say people who inspire me are really team-oriented people. Maybe that's something I've learned. We work on, we try to bridge the gap between computer science and biology.
Yeah.
These are two disciplines with so few people in the middle, and no one can be the best computer scientist and the best immunologist or best cancer doctor. So these complex projects can only work if we have the best experts, but who are open to discussions, to debate. And I think this is what I detect in people personally. I see, I've seen many students, many colleagues, sometimes who are extremely talented in one domain, but not necessarily
open to feedback,
or curious. Maybe it's a mix of curiosity as well outside of your field. So this is what I personally detect and try to work with.
And we've got time for one or two more questions.
Yeah, sure.
JP.
Yeah.
So, in an environment that you were creating, which is incredibly dynamic and bringing together different skill sets, I imagine managing up and simplifying that messaging can be quite challenging at times.
Yeah.
I'd love to know how you go about communicating with people and how you engage with the board and investors and things like that.
Yeah, sure. So I think I'm super privileged to be working with a fantastic board and more generally supporting an ecosystem of advisors, of people who help us. Just to give an example, like in the board, so we raised capital twice, seed round, Series A. One of my board member is actually you interviewed him, is Ed Clippers, from Sofinova. He was one who was the first to lead, so he led the seed round, so demonstrated some trust, and he's been such a support, and taking the risk which I think is a no-brainer personally, but still to understand that we need deep AI in order to impact biotech and pharma, right? So people like that, a bit visionary about, okay, we need, funding companies like us means a bet on the future, betting on a good team, on a fantastic project, but risky as well, because the market has to has to understand us. So working with Ed has been a fantastic journey, I would say. I have other very good investors, Cathay Innovation, BPI, etc. So very good board. Maybe I would add that in terms of ecosystem, we work a lot with our scientific board. We are supported by some of the best minds in the academic world. The chair of our board is Sarah Teichmann, who is professor at Cambridge in the UK. She was the head of massive project called the Human Cell Atlas, international consortium to generate data at scale to understand human biology. And we have so many other, Caroline Uller, professor at MIT, et cetera, who really are bringing us, not only the scientific expertise, but also I would say, constantly saying us what you guys are doing is going in the right direction. And
like a sense check.
Yeah. And this is important even for me as a CEO. We have so many options. So having all of this feedback is very important.
And the last question, what do you think success would look like, let's say 10 years from now, for you and the team at Bioptimus?
10 years is a long time. I think in 10 years, I would love to see drugs that we have helped develop on the market. So people cured.
Would you, one thing that a few people have told me about, which I always think really resonates with me, is actually bringing the patients in to meet the team after they've benefited from the treatment and things like that.
I would love that.
Yeah, that'd be something
that would
kind of drive it home, isn't it? I think.
Yeah. Inviting patients that we've saved is really what we're after. Yeah.
Thank you, JP. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.